us in this room. God, that you would grant us peace. Help us to slow down. That you would help us lay down in these green pastures that you talk about. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Will I have a seat where you are this morning? Good morning, Ascent. There's like 5 of you. It's good. It's good. We'll try 10. Good morning, Ascent. Oh, it's so good to be here with you this morning. My name is Stuart Atkins. I'm grateful to be able to share these few moments with you on this very cold Sunday. Thanks for being here. I know Miss Humdy, I know that you're at home watching this online. Just wanted to say hi. That's all. And everybody else is online as well. But I'm glad to be able to share a few moments with you this morning. 12 years ago, wow, it's a long time. 12 years ago, I stepped away from a full-time ministry position as a student pastor at a church in Georgia. Now, a little bit before that, I had started a videography business where I was serving brides and grooms on their wedding day, as well as small businesses who would need to share their story through the medium of video. But within a few weeks of putting that job and walking away from that, I was back in the church world as a new church had just started and had met for the very first time in a local park in the summer of August, which is so hot. But we all met out there, and a new church was birthed. And fast forward a few years, I went from being a volunteer, just like a regular volunteer, to a super volunteer, to then a full-time volunteer. And then soon after that, I was like a part-time staff person, and then finally, I was a full-time staff person. All the while still running a functioning videography business. So 2 jobs at once. And as you can imagine, rest and slowing down was not part of my life. It's not at all how I would describe my life at that time. And then as time went by, I realized that I really wasn't doing either of those jobs really well. I was also a dad to Koa at the time and married just a few years. And so rest and slowing down to be with God was not part of my life whatsoever. It's not how I would describe it. And then the years that followed, I was on a mission to find the rhythm in my life that would allow me to do things differently. I was tired. I physically couldn't do it any longer. And knowing that I wasn't good at either one, I knew I needed some change. And it took some sacrifice and for sure some discomfort, saying no to what seemed like the right things at the wrong time, and then saying yes to other things to make all of this happen. But I started a journey at that time to make sure that rest became a significant part of my life. And while I've not been perfect over the last number of years, it is very important to me, and it is a priority for me and for my family. You heard us say it a couple of weeks ago, now at the end of last year. We looked forward to what this year what would bring, what we would talk about on a given Sunday like this. And we thought, what if we started 2025 a little differently than most places would? What if we started 2025 with this question? What if we started the new year encouraging people to slow down? Knowing that the new year typically brings and is filled with the complete opposite. As January 1 comes, it's all about go, go, go. It's all about do more, be more, fill as much as we can, do as much as we can. And we found this verse out of Psalm 127. It's part of a greater collection of Psalms that's known as the Psalms of Ascent. And God's chosen people would every year go to the city of Jerusalem, and they would have to go up because of the topography. They would have to go up to the city of Jerusalem. So wherever they would live, they would move upwards to Jerusalem. And they would sing these songs or recite these poems to one another and with one another, and they became known as the Psalms of Ascent as they walked up to Jerusalem, as they would remind one another of what the Lord had done, not just that year from the last time they did this, but from the years and generations before them. The stories of God's faithfulness throughout history and in their history, they would remind one another and they would sing these songs to one another and say and recite these poems to one another as they went for their annual pilgrimage to the city. And in our time together, we've landed on this one verse, Psalm 127, verse 2. And it says this: "Don't you know that he enjoys giving rest to those he loves?" Don't you know he enjoys giving rest to those he loves? And in our daily lives, the Lord enjoys giving rest to those he loves. But can we truly believe that? Can we truly say that? Can we say that it is a true rest, is a true gift from God, and also a gift that he actually enjoys giving to each one of us? I would say that most of us in this room here, grew up, in the civilization, in the culture that we find ourselves even today, would say that rest is seen more and experienced more as a reward, right? Something that if I work really hard, then I get to rest. If I do the thing, then I will get to rest. When I finish fill in the blank, then I will get to rest. Rest has always been, for me, a reward, something that I've earned, something that I get to enjoy when I've done the thing and I've done the work to show that I've earned it, so now I get to rest. But what if rest was simply a gift that God enjoyed giving for a greater purpose? And you may have been in this room the last 2 Sundays, or maybe heard part of what we've been talking about the last 2 weeks online. And you may think, there's just no way. Like you don't know my life, you don't know my schedule, you don't know my calendar, you don't know my commitments, and how these things kind of interweave with 3 young kids who are all playing basketball all at the same time, who are going to school every single day, who has homework and then music lessons. We got to figure out the carpool situation and then figure out what the grocery list is, then go get the groceries, then come home and cook the food that we all need to eat. Then getting everyone ready for tomorrow with what you need and what they need for tomorrow. Then everyone goes to bed, and then you got to get them all out of bed again because they forgot to brush their teeth. My people. And then you do a little bit of reading, and then one quick episode of that documentary that you started a few weeks ago that's really, really interesting, right? And then a little bit of social scrolling, and then a little bit of that side hustle that you've been thinking about doing, and maybe I should. And then some pillow talk with your significant other on the other side. And then the thought comes, did I lock the door? Did I turn off the stove? Is the fridge closed? And oh yes, I gotta sleep today. And then I have my job tomorrow. And I guess I'll work out tomorrow. I guess I'll figure out how to finish those 10,000 steps that I'm supposed to do today. I'll just add it on tomorrow. And then I'll try my best to schedule that meeting with my friend that I really want to see, like in July sometime. And that's Tuesday. Let's take a breath together. Knowing that's not everybody's life, and that's not everybody's schedule here in today. Not all of us are mothers of 3 trying to figure out life, living just outside of Denver in 2025. But we could each and every one of us do this little exercise in absolutely no time. And we can figure out what our schedule and our life looks like in relationship to what we just talked about. So how and when does God enjoy giving us this rest? How do we get to experience this rest and this reward that he's given to us? Or is it just something that we need to do and do and do? And then when we do it and we figured it out, we know how to do it, then he gives us rest. Or is it in the midst of every part of our day that we go, okay, now I'm experiencing a little glimpse of this rest? Or is it sometimes for us to just go, I need to stop completely and then be able to experience this rest? How can we learn to prioritize moments and minutes in every day to accept this gift that God seems to give us? So we all know this, that rest is needed. And we need rest in various different ways. And we all experience rest in different ways as well. Some of us, mostly, we need some mental rest. And if you're here last week, this one may speak to you specifically. We need some mental rest because we remember that our brain is an amazing and complex organ. It's possible to do incredible things, controlling almost every function of our body. When you think about your creativity or your memory or your decision making or your ability to process things that are happening around you, that's your brain. Your brain controls your thoughts, your emotions, our movements. Our brain controls that. It regulates our breathing, our body temperature, the desire to eat something because we know we are hungry, or stop eating because we know we are full. And sometimes our brain just needs to turn off and slow down and maybe shut down for just a moment. Sometimes we need to be able to make some time to be quiet just so we can gain some perspective. Sometimes we need to just brain dump and be able to write something down that's been on our minds all the time. And the only way to get rid of it and move on from it is to actually physically write it down. Or some of us, we need to process it. We need to process it out loud with someone around us, to be able to speak the words and go like, it's in my head, it's in my brain, and I need to say something and say it to someone. And maybe that's a close friend or a trusted relative or someone like a mentor. And some of us, I know there's a few of us in here, that sometimes for our brains to slow down, our body needs to move. That's strange somehow, but somehow that's how our brains work. And we need a mental rest sometimes. Sometimes we just need a physical rest. We've been walking around picking things up all day long. We've been on our feet. We've been driving from here to there. We've been washing this and cleaning that. Then we have to go run a practice. Then we have to be on a work site or sit in front of a desk or sit on a computer for 8, 10, 12, 14 hours a day. And sometimes our physical bodies just need a break. Sometimes our muscles just need time to restore itself and recover itself. There's a funny story in Mark chapter 4 when Jesus is with his disciples in a boat, but all around them is a storm, and Jesus is taking a nap. And these fishermen, professional fishermen who are now his disciples, are scared because this storm is bigger than anything they've seen before, and they are fearful, but Jesus is taking rest. He's tired enough that a storm on the outside doesn't even wake him up. And then he goes and he is woken up by his disciples, and they say, Jesus, the storm is crazy. And he calms the storm. It's in that moment that Jesus in his human body still needs rest. Rest enough that a storm would not even wake him up on its own, that his disciples needed to come and wake him up. And sometimes our physical rest is needed. We just need to take a nap like Jesus did. 5 minutes here, 10, 15, 30 minutes throughout our day, or maybe once, a couple times a week. We just need to take a nap. Give our body and our brain a time to just recharge because they're so interconnected. And sometimes we just need to walk outside, out in the sun, in the wind. Maybe not today, but Wednesday, I don't know. Just to feel what it feels like to have sun and walk and move our blood in our bodies. And sometimes we just need to take a break from our devices and from our screens and from our speakers, just to be able to step away from our constant state of stimulation. Sometimes our physical bodies just need some rest. And sometimes it's our emotional pieces that we need rest. And this may be a big one and a heavy one for a lot of us because we carry heavy stories. And not just for ourselves, but we carry these heavy stories for everyone around us, for our friends and our family, for those close to us. We constantly are having to have challenging conversations and making decisions, big ones and small ones, and there's life-altering moments happening to us all the time. And for all that time, we feel like we need to stay sharp and stay on top of things so that we can rise above the emotion and the feelings and know exactly what we're supposed to do. But this emotion is so heavy that we just carry with us, and we just need a rest sometimes. Sometimes we just need to cry and just let it out. Just allow our bodies to release and cry. And sometimes we just need someone to hear us. It's the black one. And we just need someone to hear us. We don't need answers. We don't need clarifying questions. We just need someone to hear what we have to say. And this one's heavy and this one's tough, but sometimes it's the emotional part that we just need rest. And sometimes we need spiritual rest is what we need. We need to slow down enough so we can simply hear God's voice, to quiet our lives down enough above the noise to hear what he may have to say. Sometimes we just are seeking his direction. God, I need to know. God, I need to trust you. God, I need to figure out what. And God, I need you. So can you be faithful like you've been? God, I need your direction. And we just need a spiritual rest to be able to say that to him. And sometimes we need answers to the questions that we have of him and from him. And sometimes we just need to be still enough to be in the very presence of God so that our bodies and our souls can be refreshed and restored and renewed. But would it change my life? Would rest change my life? And I don't mean in the way that we would be more successful, we would make more money, we would be more known. I'm not talking about that kind of efficiency tool. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the way of discipleship. Would rest allow me to on this journey of discipleship, of being with Jesus, of being like Jesus, of doing as Jesus did? See, I think most of us will recognize this and be able to agree that we don't change because it means that something has to change. We don't change because it means that something has to change. Now, you may be like me. You might love a transformation story. I don't know if you guys remember this. In 2004, there was a brand new show that came on TV, on cable TV at the time, and it was called The Biggest Loser. Anyone remember that show? Anyone love that show? I did. I sure did. It was great. Don't worry. The irony of sitting on the couch while eating food and dessert every Tuesday, watching other people work out really hard, it's not lost on me. But it was a great show. If you remember, it was the first workouts. We got introduced to these contestants who would come and go, I'm going to compete against other contestants, and our goal is to lose as much body percentage weight than anybody else on this show. And that was the premise of The Biggest Loser. And there were first workouts, and there were last chance workouts, and then there was the weigh-ins every single episode, and then the big reveal of the person who got voted out and see how far they had come. And that show, people would reveal how much weight they would lose. And some was 80, some was 100, 130, 150 pounds in just a short amount of time. That was the premise of that show. And for every one of those contestants, their stories were very, very similar, and they were heading down a very similar trajectory as well. So nothing was going to change for them unless they were willing to change something. Now, in the show, it's extremely extreme and not what I would suggest any of us do at all. But their lives in that show began to change as their activity level changed, as their strength changed, as their diets changed, as their water intake changed, as the amount of sleep they had changed, as the guidance they were receiving from these coaches, as that changed, the motivation that their bodies themselves, they as people started to change. And in the end, they were different people from when they started. And I believe that there's a part of each one of us that walk into this building, into this room on any given Sunday and desire that same change. And maybe we wouldn't describe it as an extreme makeover, house edition necessarily, or The Biggest Loser, but we desire that change that is 1%, that 1% of difference where we walk in and go like, man, if I'm just a little bit different, that's what I hope for. That's why I walk in these doors, that I would know God just a little bit more. Our hope is that we walk in and go like, I just want to hear a whisper from God or a word from God that says, this is who I am. And that it's the encouragement that you need at just the right time, that God says, this is what you need. That is the correction that you need, that is timely and perfect for where you find yourself right now. And you go, God, that's you. And I hear your voice. And it feels like it's just you talking to me as I sit what feels like by myself in this room. And that's why I believe a lot of us walk through these doors, trusting that God would say, hear my voice. And this is the 1 degree of change. But in 2025, our lives can be filled with so much that the idea of being with Jesus and being like Jesus and doing what Jesus does can quickly become just a catchphrase that Bill says over and over again, and it's something that they talk about at Ascent. But I can't do that. Not me. And we simply resign to, it's not for me. And yes, we have the desire to do that, but can I do that without needing to change or do anything different? And for most of us, our greatest hurdle, our greatest obstacle is simply our busy and hurried life. And you're not alone, by the way. Jesus had a very busy life too. It's hard for us to imagine that, considering they talked about camels and weird things that we don't experience or know here. But in Mark chapter 1, the book of Mark describes a busy 48-hour period for Jesus and what that may look like. And I hope to be able to open that up to allow us to see what that life may look like. In chapter 1, starting in like verse 16 or so, this is the moment where Jesus first finds his disciples. And we're introduced to 4 of them. We're introduced to Simon and Andrew, James and John, 2 sets of brothers. And this is where Jesus calls them for the very first time. And in a few verses later, in 21, they travel together and they go to this town of Capernaum and they walk to this town. And once they get there, they enter the synagogue. And once they are in the synagogue on the Sabbath day, Jesus stands up in front of a group of people and starts to preach and teach. And soon after that, he goes on to the next thing, which is healing a demon-possessed man. And soon after that moment, he's like, well, it's kind of late in the afternoon or late in the evening. We could get to go home. And they'll go to Simon's house. But Simon's mother-in-law is sick. And it's Jesus that takes him and goes to the room with his mother-in-law and heals his mother-in-law. And then soon after that, I think, okay, now there's a break, right? Now it's dinner time. No, it's not. It's around sunset at that point, and every sick and possessed person from that town is brought to Simon's house. And they're sitting outside that door. The Bible describes this, the entire town was right outside. And at some point that night, all those people would have left. Who knows how long that took. And we hear about in verse 36 that the next morning Simon goes and finds Jesus to let him know what the plan is for our day. Jesus, now this is what we're going to do today. And that day it entailed some travel. And it was also filled with some preaching and healing. And moving on to the next town and the next city, talking to the next group of people. And we may read this and go like, yeah, we was walking a lot. But we don't do that. We don't go from here to Superior and go, I'm going to walk to Superior. I'm going to walk to Westminster. I'm going to walk to Broomfield. No. We get in a car and we drive there. For Jesus, it was the same thing. He was like, I'm going to walk with my feet to a place. And when he would get to these synagogues, all the people were not just going, wow, Jesus, you're amazing. Totally agree with all you're saying. And this is a good day. It was filled with arguments. It was filled with explanations. It was filled with no, but you can't say that, Jesus. And that's exhausting. I'm sure many of you will be able to relate being in meetings like that, where your idea is a good idea, but not everyone loves your idea. So you got to explain it. You got to tell it. You got to teach it. You got to show them why. You got to cast vision. And not just once, over and over and over again. And this is what Jesus was experiencing. And there were just people looking for him all the time, constantly around people. And if you're like me, that would be draining. Can't do it. It's a busy day and a busy life. And Jesus modeled what it looks like when that is the description of our lives. What do you do in those kinds of moments, in those kinds of days? What do you do in the very middle? And this is what he did. Mark 1:35 reads this. It says, before daybreak the next morning, Jesus got up and went out to an isolated place to pray. The next verse is when Simon comes to find him and says, Jesus, this is the plan for today. Right in the middle of what is one of Jesus' busiest and craziest days, this is what he chooses to do. Goes out by himself, finds an isolated place to pray, to simply be with his Father. And the truth is that God is a giver of gifts, and rest is one of his most gracious gifts that he chooses to give us. So even God did it. Remember in Genesis chapter 2, it is God who, after 6 days of creation, chooses to rest. He commands it to his people, the special group of people called the Israelites in Exodus chapter 20, when he says, you will set aside an entire day to do no work, but to rest and to be with me. Then Jesus models it for us. He models what it means to take out time of your day to rest. In Luke chapter 5, verse 16, but Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. Jesus prioritized this for himself and cast an example for us to follow. So he got away from the crowds so he could practice being in solitude. He got away from what was crazy and busy just to be still and be with his Father. He got away from what was challenging every single day just to be able to care for his soul. And then he promises one thing. He says, I promise you this. I am the source of your rest. I am. Jesus says, I am that source. And it's a popular verse we may have heard before, but don't let it just be a verse that we read. In Matthew 11:28-30, it says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I, Jesus, will give you rest. Take my yoke upon me and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your soul. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." The very heart of God, it brings the Father much joy and enjoyment to give us rest. We read this earlier in Psalm 127, verse 2. Don't you know he enjoys giving rest to those that he loves? So, what do you want me to do today? What do you want me to do today? I have 4 things I want to share with us. 4 things that I hope will be easy enough to remember. But as we consider what it might be like to take time to rest, these are the 4 that I would love to share with you. Number 1 is I want you to consider trusting him. Trust that rest is part of his plan. Why not do 7 days when 7 days are available? Why not work 24 hours when 24 hours is available? What if the plan was different than that? What if rest is part of the plan? What if it's not just about go, go, go? What if it is about a different way to do it? What if God said, trust me that you need rest, and I am the source for that rest. And that's a gift and a blessing that I want to give to you. In Proverbs chapter 3, if you read the entire proverb, I trust that you would. It's a good one. I'm just going to read the first 6 verses for us. Trusting that the Lord's way to do things may be better than what we may come up with on our own. It says this in verse 1, "My son, do not forget my teaching, but keep my commands in your heart." Why? "For they will prolong your life many years and bring peace and prosperity. Also do this, let love and faithfulness never leave you. Bind them up around your neck, write them on the tablets of your heart. Why? Then you will win favor and a good name in the sight of God and men." Verse 5 says this, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him." Why? Because he will make your path straight. Trust him. Trust that rest may be a part of a plan that you may not have thought for yourself. But God says, trust me with this. Because sometimes he's quiet. When we're looking for that path that we're asking for, sometimes he's quiet. Sometimes he can be loud, and sometimes he can be mysterious. And sometimes he can be too big for my mind to wrap it around it. But even in those times, he is always faithful. He's always trustworthy. He's always on your side. It says, you can trust me. Trust that rest could be part of the plan for you, the desire he has for each one of us. So number 1, trust him. Number 2, know his truth. Know his truth, or know the truth. Know his ways. Read his ways. Open his book. And when we do, don't look for what we're supposed to do. Don't look for what we're supposed to be. Look first for him. This is a change in the last year for me personally. As I read God's word, I started going, is this always about me and what I'm supposed to do? Or do I need to spend just a moment and go, God, where are you in this? If I'm reading Genesis 1 verse whatever, God, where are you in this? If I'm reading a prophet, God, where are you in this? Show me you in this. If anything in the New Testament, God, where are you in this? May I see you first. And then, God, where am I and what am I supposed to do? Know that you can know the way that he desires for us. Know also that you are loved. And I don't know if this is grammatically correct. It's probably not. But you are pre-loved. Know that when you go to work in the morning, that you are already loved. When you wake up in the morning, you are completely loved. Knowing that before you do anything for anyone at any time, that you are completely loved. And whatever intentions you have with it, that you are loved by a God and a Father. Know that you are his. Know that he is proud of you. And if no one says that to you, no one gives you that inclination, no one gives you that idea or thought, know that he says, I am proud of you and you are loved. And I enjoy giving you good gifts. And one of those is rest. So when the noise and the busyness and the hurry of every one of our lives is at its highest, trust Him to speak the words that you need to hear. You are His son. You are His daughter. He is your Father. He's not just a good shepherd. He's not just the good shepherd. Let Him be your shepherd. That He is my good shepherd, filled with grace and giving me exactly what I need. I want to pause for just a moment in these two. And I've asked my good friend Whitney to be able to sing a song over each one of us today. On the screen, the words will be up on the screens behind me up here, and I trust that every one of these words would reinforce for every one of us who God says you are. Loved. Before you do anything, you are His. He's proud of you. He gives you good gifts. I pray that the power of these words would fill your heart this morning, and you would feel encouraged knowing that a God is for you, that you can trust, and that shares these truths with you.
How many times can you hear the same lie before you start to believe it? The enemy keeps whispering to me, I swear these days that's all I'm hearing. I used to know who I was, now I look in the mirror and I'm not so sure. Lord, I don't want to listen to the lies anymore. The truth is I am my Father's child. I make Him proud and I make Him smile. I was made in the image of a perfect King. He looks at me and wouldn't change a thing. The truth is I am truly loved by a God who's good when I'm not good enough. I don't belong to the lies, I belong to you. And that's the truth. When I feel like there's so much noise living rent-free in my head, heaven finds me in a still small voice that mounds like grace instead. You remind me who I am when I look in the mirror and I'm not so sure. Lord, I don't want to listen to the lies anymore. The truth is I am the Father's child. I make Him proud and I make Him smile. I was made in the image of a perfect King. He looks at me and wouldn't change a thing. The truth is I am truly loved by a God who's good when I'm not good enough. I don't belong to the lies, I belong to you. And that's the truth. 'Cause I know who I am. 'Cause I know who you are. I hold your truth inside my heart. I know the lies are always gonna try and find me, but I've never been so sure. The truth is I am my Father's child. I make Him proud and I make Him smile. I was made in the image of a perfect King. He looks at me and wouldn't change a thing. The truth is I am truly loved by a God who's good when I'm not good enough. I don't belong to the lies, I belong to you. And that's the truth. That's the truth.
think for this morning, as we look at that second verse, it reads, or song is, when I feel like there's so much noise living rent-free in my head, heaven finds me in a still, small voice, and it sounds like grace instead. So can I trust him? Could I know his truth? The third thing I want to challenge us with is to take a step. Take a step, just one step, one thing that allows us to say, I'm one step closer. For me, the one step over the last couple of months has been this prayer of gratitude, but it happens at a very specific time of the day. It's the last thing that I do. It's at the end of the day, I lay my head out on my bed and I'm almost asleep, and I say, God, here are the things that I'm grateful for. Here are the things that I want to express gratitude for. And I don't remember if I do, say, one thing, 10 things. I just know that I fall asleep being grateful for what God has given and done for me that day. What better place to fall asleep at? Another thing we've done is I've chosen and committed with my wife to be able to wake up 30 minutes before the rest of our house does and become intentional about what those 30 minutes is and what it does and what we do. And then also once a week as a family, we don't get this all right all the time, but we try to create a space for our entire family to find out what it means for God to speak to us. And over Christmas, it was kind of easy, right? We all had our little Advent calendars and Advent stuff that we would do. And as a family, crazy enough sometimes, we'd get together and be able to read a question that was a fun one, and then we'd read a passage of scripture together and we'd answer some questions. And that was our moment just to be together and go, God, what do you want to say to us as a family? Those are the things that I've chosen to do and my family has chosen to do. But here might be a few things that you might consider doing. In week one, we described or shared with you an option, a resource that we've created. It's a simple QR code that we'll put up on the screens, and it allows you to get a place where an iPhone wallpaper has been created for you to fit on your phone that simply is Psalm 127 verse 2. And as many times as we open our phones and look at it, this is the first thing that we'll see, a reminder of what God promises, that he promises each one of us rest. It's available for us and for you right here. Now, we've also created magnets of the very same verse on your way out this morning. If you were not here last week, grab one. Put it somewhere where you'll see it in your car. Take 3, 4 if you need to. Share it with somebody. Take as many as you want, honestly. But put it somewhere where you would remember what promises God has given to us. I have some friends who've started doing some other things, like a guided prayer, an app that they've found that's guiding their prayers in the morning and at night every single day. That's there, a resource for each one of us. How about this? How about changing your experience as you drive to work? So I'm sure some of us in this room here commute from your home to wherever you work, or you get in your car and you drive. What if those moments changed for you? What if that experience was just a little bit different? The great team that I get to work with every single week created a playlist curated just for this series, just for the Rest series that we want to make available to you. So if you're a Spotify user or an Apple user, you can scan one of those barcodes up there. And if you don't catch it right now, it'll be kind of cycling through the TV that's out there in the lobby after the service. An opportunity for you to hear different words, different voices than Altitude and DNVR. And those guys are great, and they'll be there next month. But for this season, what if this was what we filled our drives with? Or what if our drives were simply silence? Eyes open, but silence. God, what is it? What do you want to share? What do you want to say? Maybe it's those last few moments as you pull into your driveway or into your garage before you get out and you just go, God, can I just be still right here? No one knows you're there. And say, God, these are the moments that I have. This is the moment that I have. And this might be something that you need to talk about with your friends, or your family, or your spouse, or you people who live in your home. Create space for one another. If this is something that you want to do, tell somebody in your family, hey, I'd really love to create a space to be able to do this, and then work together to create that space for one another. And I have no idea what your family looks like and how it works and how it operates, but you do. So maybe consider figuring out a way to create space for one another. It'll be hard, not going to lie. And it'll be challenging, and it'll be uncomfortable, and it will take some time. But what if this is what we chose to do? What if this is what we trusted God, saying, God, He said to rest. I said I can create space time to rest, or just in the middle of it all, find a moment to rest. Number 4, this is the last one. I want you to start small, but do it every day. Start small and do it every single day. A few years ago, I have this in my back pocket. I've saved this for 14 years for this moment. You guys are going to think I'm real cool. These are medals for a half marathon that I ran with my wife. And these are 2 medals for 2 half marathons, that I ran in 2010. It's a long time ago. And for 14 years, I said, Paige, don't throw them away. She's asked me multiple times. I said, no. It's for a moment like this. You know what I learned when I trained for these 2 half marathons in 2010? Is that I was not a runner. But every day that I would get up and I would find the moment and the time to go and run your 3 easy miles, or your, tempo miles, or your hard runs, or your long runs, that every time I did that, the urge and the growth and the desire to do it again grew. And I would rather have it be hard during those days and moments of training than to be hard the day of running these 2 half marathons. And the more I did it, the more I wanted to do it. And the more I did it. It's something called a runner's high. That something about your body just craves it, desires it more and more. And when you start, it's tough. When you start, it's hard. When you start, it's not what you want to do. But the more you do it, the more you want to do it. And the more you want to do it, the more you turn out doing it. And slowly, all the other things, what we also learn is that time is the greatest hardship in training for a marathon. How do you find the time? The more you do it, the more you realize that you need to be able to clear out space and make it a priority. And things start to fall away when something else becomes that priority. The truth is that if we want to change something, we have to change something. If we want to walk that 1 degree, we got to do 1 degree. And maybe it is today for you to trust Him. That rest may be part of your life, and you got to figure out how to do it in the very middle of everything that's crazy and wild and out of control in your life. Maybe it's for some of you to say, God, I didn't know your truth. Maybe open your word and read it and try to find you in it. God, show me where you are in these words that I read. For some of us, it may be simply taking a step, doing something, 1 step, just 1 thing. And I trust that you would start small, that we would start small. And that it was small enough that we could see ourselves doing it every single day. And the greatest gift is that we don't get to do it alone. You know, like John and Jackie talked about, I've been in places where I've seen the value of doing it together and in community and going, God, how do I do this together? This is tough and hard, and these people may or may not know my life, but I'm going to trust you that you may encourage me to be a part of a group of people who together are saying, God, show up. Show us who you are. I trust that something that the Lord shared with you really does resonate with you. That you today would walk out this room and go, I'm going to make this choice and make this decision. To trust you, to know your truth, to take 1 small step, to do it every single day. Let's pray together. God, I am grateful to be able to be on this room, God, in this room and share this time with these people, these friends of mine, God. I've been on a journey with you over the last number of years, figuring out and trusting that, God, rest is your gift. The rest is important, God. The rest is something you give to us. And so, God, I pray that that would be true for each one of us in this room. God, that we would believe that it's for our good, not just good for us. God, help us walk out this morning knowing the thing that we need to change because we want to change. We would trust you, God. You are faithful. You've shown up. You've shown yourself. God, we just pray that we will continue to know that and that we continue to be part of who we are. We love you. We pray this in Jesus' name.